Hey, everybody. This episode is brought to you by our proud title sponsor, NHL Sense Arena, the next generation of off-ice hockey training for players and goalies. Look, we know how much you invest in your children's hockey development, the early mornings, the travel, and let's not forget the expenses of training for hockey camps, private ice time, the general expenses of the season. It's a lot. But wouldn't it be great to bring that on-ice practice experience home that's fun, fits into your schedule, and that's affordable? If you said yes, which I'm sure you did, you've got to check out NHL Sense Arena. It's a top-tier virtual reality training game that brings the on-ice practice experience home so you can practice anytime and anywhere, literally. You can transform any part of your home into a virtual ice rink where you're getting unlimited access to over 100 drills, training plans from top coaches and players, weekly drill challenges, and more that focus on improving hockey sense and physical cognitive skills, starting at just $33 per month. That is a lot cheaper than an hour of ice time. The physical side of hockey gets a lot of attention, but we don't focus enough on the mental side of it. It's something we talk about on this show all the time. NHL Sense Arena provides an immersive solution for players to sharpen those skills when ice time is limited or not affordable, and they want to get those extra reps in. So, for our listeners, NHL Sense Arena is offering an exclusive $50 off their annual plan. All you got to do is head over to their website, hockey.sensearena.com. Again, hockey.sensearena.com, and use our code HOCKEYNEVERSTOPS, and you'll level up your off-ice training by using NHL Sense Arena. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting us and NHL Sense Arena. Enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Elias, joined by Christie Casciano Burns and Mike Bonelli, and I'm wearing an orange shirt today. Mike is outside because he has no power, and Christie is in her beautiful home right now with an orange sign behind her, for those of you not listening.
That's because I'm on the air.
You're on the air. We're all on the. I have an on the air sign behind me too. For those of you not listening, again, you can watch all these shows on YouTube if you didn't know that. But I'm wearing orange as kind of a warning sign today. This is typically the color you see people wear outside. As hey, heads up, right? Heads up, there's people working here. Because today's topic is 3 signs your kid is burnt out or burning out, and what you can do about it. So basically, what we're going to do on the show today, as we do, we're going to go around the horn, around the table, and kind of discuss different signs of burnout in hockey. It's something that we talk about a lot in the game, but I don't think we recognize the signs a lot within the game as coaches, as parents. I think sometimes kids don't even realize they're burning out. I think it's easier to notice as an adult, especially when you've had kids and haven't slept in 6 or 7 years. But when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, or even younger than that sometimes, you might not know you're burnt out. You might just think this is a normal thing and maybe not even be able to vocalize it, that you're tired and you need a break or you need to stop. So today's topic, once again, 3 signs your kid is burnt out and what you can do about it. I'm going to throw this right over to Christie Casciano Burns. Christie, both of your kids have gone through the hockey journey, right? They have now out of college. They're in the real world. Maybe we should start by asking, were there ever times they were burnt out before you start giving your signs?
No, because we always brought balance into their lives. We never, even when they wanted to keep, let's say it's summertime, they want to keep going with hockey and clinics. When they were little, we pulled them out, said, no, you got to take a break, enough. And that was always a good move.
Right.
Because I think that when they're young like that and they're eager and they want to learn everything they can about something they're so passionate about, they're going to want to keep going. So I think it was good for us to pull them out and get them interested in other things. They did karate in the summertime, lacrosse, and sometimes we just did nothing. Those were the best memories. We would just do a barbecue, watch the kids out in the front yard. We had a hockey net, and they would shoot on the basketball hoop, hockey net, and just have fun as a family, do absolutely nothing scheduled. It was so good. And I think that helped keep them from burning out. But I have seen kids who do burn out. And sometimes the signs are really obvious. They're showing all of a sudden a lack of interest in something that they were really passionate about. You got to drag them to practice. They're making excuses. Or even they're so hard on themselves that they never think that they're good enough, that they're not performing to the level that they think everyone that they should be at. Some of the signs are obvious, some are not. Maybe all of a sudden they're getting really tired all the time. Fatigue, extreme fatigue. That could come from a lot of emotional and physical stress, which can be a huge sign of burnout.
Christy, it's making some great points. First off, I want to comment on the doing nothing thing that you said, because
I love it.
yeah, we've at this point of the summer when we're recording this, we've just entered into that with my family where there's nothing on the schedule. And what's funny about that is that there's a little voice in your head actually it's like, oh, we should be planning something, we should be doing something, but then a little Christie Casciano Burns pops up on my shoulder and she goes, you don't have to do anything. That's not how you sound. That's just how I'm doing it for the purpose of the show.
I like that.
But honestly, it's like, look, the season's coming, we know that.
Yeah.
We just got done baseball, the kids are in camp where they're playing sports every day, let's be honest about it. You just got to tell yourself it's okay that nothing's planned. And then weird things start happening where we go like, we should like go to dinner, or maybe we can grill tonight. It's like, oh, I can do that. It's a really weird feeling, just being able to do that, right? But going back to what you said, and I'm going to throw it to Mike in a minute. I think that we're again at the end of the show, we're going to review all of these, like the signs of burnout. But the thing that you said that's really important, kind of as we even go deeper into the show, not all the signs of burnout are obvious. Right. Some of them are very subtle. And I think that that's part of the show today is noticing those subtle signs, like the kids tired all the time. Right. And it's so easy for us as adults to go, they're a kid, they'll be fine. They're not tired. They think they're tired. They don't even know what tired is. Yes, they do.
Right. And they're going through a growth spurt and, they need more sleep.
Right.
You say that, right?
Or I've seen it like, kids are wuss, man. Toughen up. Right. Right. I'll tell myself that when I get out of bed in the morning too. Mike, let's throw it to you. Christy gave a bunch of them there, but you're heavily involved with kids, I think, at an interesting age too, those kind of mid-teen years. And again, you've coached every age across the board. But I do think in those mid-teen years, it can be tough to tell because there's a lot of things that are changing in a young boy or a young girl's life at that time that I don't want to say they become distractions, but they just grow up. Like hockey might not be number one in their life. That doesn't mean they're burnt out though, right? I mean, it just means life's coming right at them. So let's start there. I also want to get your thoughts on just generally as well.
I mean, I think Christy makes a great point to begin the whole conversation that she avoided a lot of those burnout pieces because they did break in time. Like just say, listen, this is just not something we're going to do every day. And it's, so, and we're talking from a hockey perspective. So we do know it's the longest, well, it used to be, right? The longest season. Now it seems like every sport has their own long seasons, but you're in your own season. You have to have a break. The burnout, I think the signs occur when, as much as we all want our kids to be the ones that wake up at 5 a.m. and drag us out of bed and make us go to the rink and want us to go to training, the fact is there are many more kids than not that don't know how to say that. Like they don't know how to turn it off. They don't know how to tell mom and dad, listen, where they feel bad, like you said, Lee, like, oh, I don't want to go today. And they almost feel like ashamed that they're saying that.
Right.
And then the parents have the FOMO, right? And we get crazy because like, oh, geez, if you're not training this week, like 1 week's going to affect, the rest of their career.
Right.
But I think that's just building it in, knowing that you got to look at your own child. Now, again, these aren't across the board. I've seen some kids and they literally are outside. Every time I drive by their house, they're shooting basketball, hockey, lacrosse. And I never see a dad out there or a mom ever. But that's that kid. And, now if you could build in times, and I'm not going to say they're a good parent or a bad parent. I don't know the parents, right? But if I look and say, well, I could probably get this guy out and let's go to a movie. Let's go to a play. Let's go to let's go to a siblings event. Let's go to somebody else's, do something else or try to, get something else in their life. And I think we've talked about this a lot on the show that doesn't involve improving your hockey ability. Like if you're justifying that you don't want your kids to burn out, so you take them off the ice, but then you put them in like a taekwondo class to help them get better at hockey, then you're really just adding to the burnout. You're just distracting one piece for another. And I think I get into it too. Like, oh, if you do that, that's going to help you with your hockey ability. well, can I just do it just to do it? Well, no,
Right.
not really. Like if I tell, hey, we should go play tennis. Why? Oh, it'll really help you with hockey. Well, what do I care about that? I just want to play tennis. So it's just a matter of just saying, the burnout occurs. I think listen, when I grew up, you almost couldn't burn out because there was no options.
Right.
Like you just were off the ice. You talk to NHL players that are over the age of 40. There was no burnout. Why? Because there just wasn't a choice. You didn't have the ability to play on the super select, CCM invite in July. Just wasn't there. Started creeping in, I think, a little bit when I was in college and going into, high school and going to college. Then all of a sudden there's some summer showcase events, but I didn't train for them. You just got in the car, you showed up and you played. And now it's we've built in, the system is built in, a year-round training environment, which forces us to talk about how can we combat that. And each individual parent, I think, needs to take that personal responsibility to look at their kid. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of like it's kind of like your kids getting phones, right? If you had a group of people around you that didn't get their kids phones, it's a lot easier for you not to get a phone for your teenager, right? If you have a 12-year-old want to get a phone for, then maybe have a bunch of your peer, their friends not, get a pack. I think it's the same way in hockey. Like if you could get your 5 or 6 families that are on your team to do other things other than hockey, it helps you not have to do hockey.
Right.
And I think that, and for parents and kids, right? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of pressure comes from seeing other families do it. And there again, it's that FOMO, fear of missing out. Oh my gosh, if my kid's not
Christie,
doing that.
Doing that power skating clinic? Oh my geez. I wonder if power skating clinic.
Exactly. You see it all the time. Yeah.
Right. But we make that happen, right? What we're doing as hockey people are allowing that to happen because we fall into that trap. And I think when we have to look at our kids and be like I don't know, my kids, I think they're a lot like other kids. Like, they'll go into, macaroni and cheese month. They won't eat anything else. And then they're like, oh no, I go, hey, I made macaroni and cheese. I don't like macaroni and cheese. I like, I like ramen. Oh, okay. Well, then let's have ramen. I don't like ramen anymore, Dad. Don't you know anything about it? So it's like, well, I don't know what the hell you like. So it's very similar to sports and hockey. It's just let them take the lead. And if they're ravenous about hockey and they're forcing you to take them, I almost would say, well, let's have a discussion. Yeah, it's fine, but let's have a discussion
makes them happy.
What you could do, because down the road, like Lisa pointed out, like they don't know when they're 12 and 13 that they're going to have all kinds of issues later on that are overuse injuries. Like that's our job as parents and as hockey directors and program administrators to make sure we're educating people and let them know a well-balanced kid. Forget about if they're better at hockey. A well-balanced kid helps them be well-balanced. And ultimately, that want to look at it from our point of view, it helps you with hockey.
Right. You do have to be careful, especially with the early sports specialization. And it's not just hockey, but it's everywhere. And they're pushing these kids to be at levels that are beyond their maturity and what they can physically do. And that's playing with fire right there. You're setting yourself up for your kid to get burned out if you're pushing them. It's not coming from within. I mean, there are some kids, and we've seen some of these NHL stars. We've had them on the show, but they said, "No, I'm the one who drove it. I wanted to go to the rink, and I'm out there shooting all that." But not all kids are like that.
Well,
so you kind of have to know the balance.
The problem is too, we all want our kids to be that kid. Like, I want my kid to be that kid. Well, he's not that kid. I said he doesn't like that. So
that's going to be definitely one of the things we talk about on how to fix it. But, there's that Connor McDavid story that his mom had mentioned that when he was a young boy, probably 11, 12 years old, he couldn't understand why all his friends were playing video games. He couldn't understand it. Like, why would they be playing video games when they could be practicing hockey? And his mom told him, well, Connor, you're not like other kids. Like, and she wasn't wrong, obviously, right? He had an uncommon passion for the game. With that said, to Mike's point, you can't create that it can only be cultivated, right? And it's 100 billion% okay, to use children terminology, if your kid is not obsessed with hockey, that's absolutely okay.
Well, sorry, Lee. I will say
No,
one
go
thing,
for it.
and I've said this. This is like the initial conversation I give with any kid or any parent that used to, we sit down and set up a lesson plan for the summer, like a development plan or a private lesson plan or a small group lesson plan. And I'm very adamant about the fact that people need to understand what you just said about Connor McDavid, the Bedard kid taking his rollerblades to Hawaii, and all this kind of stuff. Like that's not the norm. And
No.
You can eat. It's so hard to build that in, but it's really easy to beat it out. And I think, if you have a kid that shows a little bit of desire and you drive them, you can drive that desire.
Right.
More easier than a kid that loves the sport themselves and can't get enough. And you cut them out a little bit, like, no, we can't go 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. The likelihood is they're going to find other vehicles to get that fix in. They're going to become an unbelievable, cook, or they're going to put their whole energy into reading, or they'll find a way. That kid, that athlete has that innate ability because that's their outlet. But a kid that doesn't have that, you can't force it into it. And that's where I think that's where the real burnout comes. That's where the resentment comes. That's where the burnout comes. That's where like, I don't like doing this. And unfortunately for all of us, we find that out when our kid's 17 years old.
Right.
Like, what the hell are you talking about? I just spent $4.2 million over the past 19 years, for you to be a hockey player. And what do you mean you don't like it? Well, I don't like it because I just like it. And it's hard for people to take that. It's hard. It's difficult.
Well, I think it's important
and
too that we check ourselves.
It's hard for
that.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard for the kid to share that with you because they're so afraid of disappointing you.
Well, and think about it. Look, and parents, this is one of those situations you got to check yourself, right? If you listen to this show, I'm all about present moment and being in the present moment. But I hear parents say we're investing all this money, and when you're 18, when you're 17, you really should not be approaching it like that. I mean, that's my opinion. I got to say that, right? You're not making a long-term investment in your kid to just be a hockey player. The investment is to help them become a better person now and hopefully build some life skills for later on. But yeah, if you're telling your kids, and again, look, follow me here, because the wording on this is important. I don't think there's anything wrong with making your kids aware, hey, I'm making a significant investment so you can play this game, and I need you to be aware of that. I don't have a problem with kids understanding that the money that we're earning is going towards helping you enjoy something. But I also hear parents say, this is so expensive. I pay all this money for you. This money, it's so much money to play hockey, and this is so expensive, and you don't appreciate it. Well, if you get 10 years of that statement, you think your kid's going to want to tell you when they don't want to do this anymore? Because now they've equated their entire worth in this game with the money that you're spending, when you're probably not really equating it to that. You probably, as a parent, get a lot of enjoyment out of your kids playing hockey. So you really got to tell them that. And again, it's just about the wording. I want to invest this money because I know you enjoy playing. And you can tell them it's a choice for you to keep playing. You don't have to do it forever if you don't want to do it, but know that I'm investing my dollars into allowing you to enjoy this game. I love you no matter what. I don't hear that a ton, right?
I just yelled it yesterday at my kid. I think it's like, because you're just like, listen, there's a lot of money, but I think if you could explain, like, this is why we're choosing this over this.
Right.
This is why we're doing this over this. And if we do this, guess what? Oh, Dad, I want to be a better hockey player. Okay, well, then not that you have to prove it, but let's see you get through here first, and then accomplish these goals, and then let's get you onto this. Because the fact is, the hockey industry, like all sports industries at this point, will take advantage of that kid. Will take advantage of that family, and you'll spend money that you don't need to spend, because a lot of us just don't know. Like, we're just like, I don't know. They're running it. They must know what they're talking about. They claim to be the experts. We'll just follow them. Right. And that's like where you're saying is that, I'm not equating your worth and the ROI of what I'm spending on you because I love you. It's, we have a limited time in our lives with our families. Yeah. And let's make the best of it by choosing the things that are going to help you. If in fact it's about development, if it's about socialness, it's about spending time in a hotel room more than on the ice, then you just have to make that choice as a family and say, I don't know, I just like hanging out with a bunch of random strangers for the whole week more than I like my family. That's fine. And that's fine too. But I think it's, it's so weird in hockey. Christie, up in your area, it's a little different because it's more regional. And I think there's a lot of places around the United States that, like, if you're in a school, a lot of the kids in the school are on the teams.
Right.
But, like, I know where I am and a lot of other places, my son's on a team. He's not with one kid that's within 40 miles of him.
Yeah.
So it's not,
same thing here.
The only social piece is that they meet at the rink.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hanging out outside the rink. So it's you got to weigh that. And I think we've talked about that about, like, Chris, you said this a million times, like when you choose your programs and buyer beware and do your research, that all comes into it. I think that does rightly equate to burnout at some point too, because getting in the car for 5 hours extra a week and now never seeing the people within your own community, that causes burnout too. And unfortunately, we don't see it until the crucial years of 13, 14, 15, when it really becomes more social. And it's not like, hey, I arranged a play date for you. Like every 6-year-old is arranging a play date for them. Right. But when you're 13 and 14, they're arranging those things. And if your kid's like, oh, I want to go hang out with Christie and her family, we're not going back to there again. Like that's just, I've been there 5 days last week. So
I think also
just FaceTime them, right?
Computer and play them on Fortnite.
Yeah. One of the other things, and I'm not sure if we can correlate it to burnout, but I can recall there was this one kid who had some real behavioral issues. Here's the scenario. So the parents push. Every kind of clinic that came along, this kid was in it. Off ice training, this kid was all about it, leading in bench presses and the whole 9 yards. And he would just get so, like his fuse could be lit so easily on the ice. And it obviously caused a lot of disruptions during the game. He's always in the penalty box. And I had asked the mom, I go, boy, what's going on with your kid? I'm just kind of concerned. Oh, he keeps saying that he doesn't want to play anymore, but he's so good. Look how good he is. And they're pushing him to be out there. So
wait, he actually said that? He actually said, I don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it anymore. But the parents were living through him because they were both hockey crazy parents, that you're going to do this regardless because this is our dream and you're good out there. You have the talent. And it just, and he's like, time out. What? Your kid has obviously got a burnout issue here, right? But they
remember some of the conversations we've had with some of these pros though too, and we hear it all the time. And these aren't anecdotal; they're fact. Like that players were pushed, they were driven, the parents were insane, and they made it to the NHL. And all of a sudden, that kid he was burned out. Like you've talked to some players, like I only play because this is all I know how to do, but I hate doing this. But at the paychecks, it's the right thing. Like this is what I like. This is what I'm doing. I don't even like to do it, but I'm this is the road I'm in. And I think we've seen that. And I think the problem is when we all look at professional athletes, it's hard to understand that to make that diamond, there was so much that had to be crushed and everything around it was killed. Yeah. Like we only see the one kid and everybody will say, well, that kid gets that dad. I mean, I had a kid in high school that played pro. And his dad, was we used to laugh like, oh, he has to do 500 shots a day in his driveway. He's not allowed out.
Right.
Well, that's cool. Like, I wish my father would make me do that. But the fact is, this kid played pro hockey for 9 years, and a lot of parents see that and say, well, see, that's what it takes.
Right.
But don't show the other 700 kids that burned out.
Right.
And also don't show.
Everybody thinks their kid is that kid.
But they also don't show the potential mental health problems that come from that, Mike. Yeah. And like, look, you and I all of us have talked to pro athletes on the record, off the record, and some of them have severe mental, I'll say, fitness issues, right? Mm-hmm. Where, they're coming to terms with it. Yeah, they had an NHL career, but I've had some people, no one's ever said, hey, I would trade it for this, but the mental stuff that they're having to figure out now later in their life is really hard. And I guess it's on each one of us individually to decide if that's worth it or not.
Right.
But look, this is me personally. I don't want my kids to grow up hating what they do, right? In any environment. Keeping in mind too that if you're going to become a pro athlete, there's a lot of other things that have to fall in place. You have to have the talent, you have to have the genetics, you have to have some form of drive, an uncommon drive to make it there. Those are all things that have to be there. But at the end of the day, when it comes to burnout, I don't think you'd ever want to let your kid get to a point where they're burnt out, period. No matter what it is, this is beyond hockey, right? Now, look, you got to remember this, and this is for the side of the audience that likes the challenges, which is great. There's a difference between being lazy and being burnt out. And unfortunately, they kind of, the reactions look the same, but they're not the same. Being lazy is one thing, but being burnt out is another thing. And again, we're talking about the signs of burnout. I want to turn this conversation a little bit because age matters in this conversation, right? To the newer hockey parents, we have a lot of great, it's always great. We get the young hockey parents every year. To the young hockey parents, it is absolutely normal for your 6, 7, or 8-year-old to not want to get out of the bed at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to their game. Now, look, Mike said it too. There's some kids that will jump out of bed at that age and get ready to play. But if your kid's fighting you to get up that early, at that age, very, very normal. All right. Now, adversely, if you're having to fight your 15-year-old to get out of bed to go to hockey, that's a little different. All right. And you have to decide, is your kid lazy or burnt out? You'll know they're burnt out if when they were 10, 11, 12, they were jumping out of bed and suddenly now they're not jumping out of bed. That's typically a sign of burnout, right? If they're 15 and you've always had to get them out of bed, you need to get your ass an alarm and tell that kid to have some responsibility because he's lazy. All right. At that point. But look, let's just break this down by age. Again, I always like to do the 12 down and the 12 up, right? 12 down, there are certain things. Again, waking up super duper early. It's not easy. It's not always fun. I wouldn't put too much into that. I think the signs of burnout at a young age are actually a little tricky. Because I think what you do when your kid is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 affects the burnout when they're 15, 16, 17, and 18, right? And a few ones that pop in my head. Are you going to every additional, I'm not talking about practice, skate, event, tournament for your kid? And here's the other thing I see, Christie and Mike, and this is one of the things that freaks me out. So for my son's team, I got to preface this, no judgment on this with anybody that's doing the things that I'm about to say. I'm just telling you how I approach it. I have no problem with people getting extra skates in or anything like that. Okay. But there's been a lot of opportunity for extra skates. There's been a lot of opportunity for extra ice time. And a lot of people are taking up on it, which is fine. I haven't even mentioned them to my kid. And it was asked of me of like, well, are you not asking him to go? I said, no, I'm not. I'm not even telling him that these things are happening. Well, why? Because he's not asking me. All right. If he was saying to me, hey, when can I get on the ice? When can I skate again? When am I going to play again? I would start saying, hey, yeah, there's some opportunities here. But he's not doing that. And my daughter's not either. They're just enjoying their summer. Again, they're 10 and 7 for anybody who doesn't listen to the show a lot. Okay. If they're showing an interest in wanting more ice time, I will gladly provide them with that. All right. Here's the other thing too, Christie, going back to your original point, especially with the younger ages. We stopped playing hockey really full time here at the end of the season, which is what, April, May, right? That's when it ended. We started doing baseball and softball and some other things. And they said something to me that I thought I'd never hear. Honestly, this is going to sound crazy to some parents. They both said to me, when are we playing hockey again?
Oh,
Right? Like, when's the season going to happen? Right. And when they did that, we went and skated and we had a little bit of time out there. And then, they haven't asked me since. So you can see that it's creating a want to play the game. Christie, again, to your point, we're doing other things. Here's another thought for the younger ages, right? Music, theater, reading, other sports. There's a lot of extracurriculars out there aside from hockey that you should allow your kids to explore. And Mike, to your point, the way my brain is wired too is how does this help them with hockey? But I got to check myself a little bit with that, right? My son plays the violin. Well, I just let him enjoy the violin. Now I might be thinking, well, his musical theory might help him a little bit in the net. And so I do calculus in my head, but I don't tell him any of that because that's my problem, right? That's my obsession with the game. Anyway, sorry, I'm going all over the place. 12 down. I think there are some signs, but I think the bigger signs are you forcing is not the right word, but are you bringing your kids to hockey all the time? And again, your kid might look really excited to go. And again, I'm not going to judge anybody that does that, but you got to think in the back of your mind, man, am I giving them a break? Because you're planting seeds later on of, well, this is normal to be playing hockey this many days a week, this 12 months a year. And then what happens is when they're 15, suddenly they're not doing it as much, or they feel pressure to do it more. Am I right, guys, that can cultivate into burnout?
Yeah. Right. And parents can burn out too. Don't forget.
Right.
I treasure the times that we were away from the rink in the summertime and just enjoyed each other. And those are some of the best memories that I have of just hanging out with each other, maybe even walking up libraries just down the street from us. We make a trip to the library. Of course, they were only allowed one hockey book because they have 15 shelves full of hockey books.
Right.
Pick something else.
Yeah, anything else, right?
But
Right.
yeah, going down to the tennis courts and just hanging out as a family. That was good for me because I could see I was burning out too.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah. So it was good to just take a break for everyone.
Well, I just wrote down.
Parents can also burn out.
I just wrote down as one of the ones we're going to discuss. Are you burnt out? If you're burnt out, there's a potential chance your kid is burnt out. I won't say that's true all the time.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's something you have to pay attention to, though, because if you're burnt out and all the travel and all the hockey and all the stuff, there's a chance the kid might be as well.
Right.
Now, again, Mike, anything else on the 12U or U12 kind of age group that you can think of burnout, aside from the obvious things of, hey, I don't want to go, I don't want to do this, right? Now, I will say this, Mike, before I throw it to you. I'm big and my wife is big on, look, if you make a commitment to a team, you made a commitment to a team. Now, if and I've always said this, and this hasn't happened to us, if they hate it, I mean, really hate it, and we've tried, and I know they've tried, it's not working out, and they want to stop, I don't have a problem stopping. I'm not going to force my kid to do something that they hate, past a certain point, right? It's not like I don't want to try my string beans tonight. It's like, no, we've tried them 12 times. You don't like them. Okay, you don't have to eat those anymore, right? But I am a big believer of you make a commitment to a team, and there might be some days you don't want to go, but you made a commitment. You follow through on the commitment. But when that commitment is chore every time, that might be a sign.
Well, so again, speaking 12U, if you, for the vast majority of us, not the Connor McDavids and the Connor Bedards and the
don't compare yourself to them.
But if ultimately, and here's the advice I usually give parents of young kids that I can see have the glimmer in their eye that an NHL contract is on the horizon, is if in fact that's what you want, then the best thing to do is to get them off the ice. If in fact the ultimate goal is for you to get them to the NHL, let's just make believe, yes, you know what, your kid is special, he's great, unbelievable talent, he's a great 6-year-old, haven't seen anybody like this in my life. If in fact you want to get to where you want to get to, then the formula really is step away from the rink, do other things, because when you need it to count the most, I often used to say at these hockey clinics that nobody's gone to a 10U state championship banquet in my lifetime. I've never been invited to our 10U state championship, at the Marriott. Hasn't happened. So it doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter. So, but if you want it to matter, when you want it to matter, and that's 16, 17, 18, draft years, USHL, BCHL, if you want it to really matter, if in fact you think that's the kid, the best way to do it is to get them off the ice and get them into other activities and put them on a different path for certain portions of the season and the year that don't relate and actively help them with hockey, because ultimately that's the right path for the vast majority of kids. Again, are there rare exceptions? There are. Maybe you have, as a parent, have to be like, well, maybe my kid's not the rare exception. I got to admit that. But I think ultimately more, and even if they are taking the time off, it's not going to hurt them.
Right.
Taking them away from the game is not going to impede their development. But like I said earlier, forcing them into situations at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old will in fact be more likely to impede when you want them to be the most successful. If in fact you have a goal for your kid, if you're Serena Williams, if you're Mr. Williams, right? And you have this goal and you have this this vision and say, this is what I'm going to make my kids be, then the best thing to do is step them away from the game and allow them to develop other pieces of their lives.
You know,
Right.
It's a great example, Mike, the Williams sisters, because it segues into this. Look, I have coached NHL draft prospects. And what's amazing to me, and this is part of the coaching journey too, is watching them choose where they're going to play. They don't take every single opportunity when they're a draft prospect, right? Because they got to make sure that they're healthy, right? You can't just play anywhere. But it's a funny thing to watch them pick and choose, or maybe more importantly, not choose to play in a certain tournament or a certain team or a certain event, because they understand exactly what you're saying. Like, this isn't about killing myself. This is about performing when I need to perform at the right time, at the right place. Same thing with the Williams sisters. I mean, you guys can watch that movie. They picked and choose. They didn't compete for years as kids on purpose for this one. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons for that, but you know, it's an example of what you're saying here of choosing the right time to do it. It's not all the time. And I think that's a trap a lot of us, both as parents and kids, fall into. I got to be everywhere all the time, all at once. You are going to burn out. I don't care how good you are. You can't do it all the time. You just can't, right? Even the pros take off. I just finished Marc Messier's book, arguably one of the best of all time. He's number 3 all time in scoring for now, right? He took off for a month after every season, a whole month, didn't even touch the ice, right? For a long time. Now, again, a lot of younger people, well, yeah, you could do that back in the 80s and the 90s. You could do that. A lot of NHL athletes do this. They take time off. They have to do it. A lot of coaches take time off. You cannot maintain this 24/7, 365 for years at a time without successfully losing your mind. You will lose your mind. And I'm going to say this too, Christie, I'm going to throw it back to you because I know you got something to say. This show, I always credit this show. This show is the reason that we take off in the spring. I was really conflicted about that. And when I did it, Christie, when I decided we're not going to do hockey in the spring, I was like, man, am I making a mistake? This doesn't feel right. It took a week for me to be like, this was not a mistake. This is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I am feeling way more revved up. I'm feeling way more relaxed. I get this, Christie. Still love the game. Love for the game didn't go away. Kids' love for the game didn't go away. It actually enhanced it. You have to take breaks. You have to take breaks in this game.
Yeah, and I wish I had the study in front of me, because we had reported this just probably, I think it was a month or so ago. A study was done on just kids leaving sports, quitting sports at age 12 and 13 in droves because they felt it wasn't fun. It was a job. They're overscheduled.
Right.
You know, there's so many things going on in their life. They're missing out on making friends and just being a kid. And so I'd rather not be in sports because there's way too much pressure. And I've already got a lot of pressure in my life.
Right.
So how sad is that we're losing kids in sports? You know, of course, we don't have to preach the benefits of sports. There are so many for our kids. And how sad that there's just way too much pressure on them that they feel they have to quit. They can't even, keep a finger in it because it's awful now for them.
I think that report, Christie, too, also points out the fact that the haves and the have-nots, like how the division of the travel player in all sports has eliminated the player. Because everybody's like, well, I can't play rec, but I'll play on the 5th AA team of my age category in basketball and hockey. Like, it's the oddest, craziest thing I've ever seen. Like when I look at people from a business perspective, and a lot of organizations I guide in recreation programs, the money, if you only want money, the recreation piece is the most money. It's the most people. There are many more parents that would rather have a muted hockey schedule and get to go skiing and get to play basketball and get to see their families and not do 27 weeks of hockey. There are more of them than the AAA. But the problem is we've eliminated that sector. Like, we've eliminated the recreational program and made it seem like it's this, like, it's like, what? You're doing what with your kids?
You're doing rec?
Like rec. Like, this is horrible for your children.
Yeah.
And we've interviewed a number of NHL community relations people and outreach leaders, and they're trying to build it back, right? They're fighting it.
Yes.
But it's a very hard thing for all of us as parents to be like, well, I'd rather my kid only play like on Saturday morning and then have Sunday off. But
Right.
they don't just, and I'd love to hear from our audience at some point, but they just don't exist. Where are they? Who's running these programs? And that's, to me, what happens, and you talk about from parent burnout. I mean, imagine when you're a hockey family, other families look at you like something's wrong with you. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're going to Boston 7 times next month? Like, I don't get it. Why?
And where do you live?
Because there's exposure there. I need to get my kid looked at 7.
Right.
But the fact is, recreation. I mean, it's really why AYSO soccer did so well, right? The 70s, because every single town had an AYSO soccer team. Every town. And now AYSO soccer is dead because everybody's now clubs and travel and that paying $67 a year to play a sport doesn't exist anymore. And the fact is, it's hurting our kids. It's detrimental. And Lee works in the mental side of the game with all these people so much that it's killing these kids. It's killing.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
Here's a question for both of you. Kind of led into it. What do you think? This is a stat. This is a fact. This is a report. I'm not making this up. What do you think the number one concern is of parents of youth athletes?
The number one.
No, what do you think it is?
Not getting enough playing time.
I mean, this is Pew Research stated the number one concern of parents of youth athletes is mental health.
Right.
That is number one, right? It's
like that. We do everything to hurt mental health.
Exactly. That's the funny part about it, is that it's our number one concern, but we're also accidentally causing a lot of this. But here's the thing. That's also parenting, right? That's also parenting in a nutshell, right? We care for our kids, but we hurt our kids. That's absolutely normal. All right. I mean, some normal for more than others, but again, I remember, it's funny, Mike, you bring that up. We had Dave Caruso from the Columbus Blue Jackets on the show. And I remember he was telling us about how one of his sectors of his drills is he has an area in the middle and it's just free play. And how the parents come up to him and say, "What are you doing? What do you mean you're just letting them in there play and there's no organized drill in the middle?" And he goes, "No, that's the point. It's just creative free play." And how people can't handle that. Right. Let's flip it again real quick, because we're almost done. We did this a little bit, but the over 12 signs for burnout. So here's what I'm going to do. Both my kids are under 12. When I was over 12, I was completely obsessed in a good way with the game. I love to practice. I love to do things outside my house. I never felt burnout as a teenager with this game. But you both have had kids in their teenage years who are now over that, or some of their in. So what are the signs that you guys know from kind of the tween into young adulthood that are signs of burnout?
Yeah, I think, again, lack of interest. So here they are, passionate about a sport up to age 12 and 13. Now, all of a sudden, you're hearing them not want to go to practice, finding other things to do, excuses not to go. And again, getting down on themselves, feeling that they're not good enough. When you start hearing that, you really got to have a conversation with them. And they're old enough to tell you now at this stage. You can have a really good conversation with them about what's going on.
Right.
Do you not like the sport anymore? What do we need to cut back? Do you want to bail? That's fine. And don't feel as if you're making it that they want to tell you what you want to hear. Make sure you're listening and they're telling you what they feel. Yeah.
Christie, one of the things I tell my kids, and I'm going to thank you for affirming me on this, is I always tell them, if you don't want to play this game anymore at any point, you should not be afraid to tell me that, because they know how much I love it. They know it's my profession. Right. And so I really do go out of I don't overdo it, but I go out of my way. If there's ever a time, they love it. They both love it now. If there's ever a time you don't want to play, I want you to be honest with me about that.
Yeah.
As cute as this comes, my daughter goes, "No, I love playing hockey." Like, that's what she said, which is great. But listen, kids don't always know that. They don't want to disappoint you. God bless them. Right. Yeah. And again, look, parents, you can absolutely go into a conversation and say something like, "Do you still want to play?" And, you're telling your kids, don't say no.
Right.
Subconsciously, you better not say no to
Exactly.
this.
Oh my gosh, that's a great
Right.
point.
Right?
It's how you talk to them is
it's
really important too.
right. You better not say no to this, right?
Yeah.
If you go in
What do
like
you
that,
mean you don't want to play?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't hear that, did
yeah.
I?
that one. What do you mean you don't want to play? Listen, God bless them. They're most likely going to say what you want to hear, right? Because they don't want to have that conversation either, right? Like, especially when, you know, you're a loser parent, when your kid's 16, maybe sometimes they don't want to deal with you. That's not true of all parents. So there's a lot of 16-year-olds that love their parents, but that's a good sign, Christy. Like you said, there's maybe a sudden change and you have to ask. We're going to get to that. Mike,
Yeah.
again, you're in the thick of it, man. You're right in the thick of it with your kids. Have you experienced this with your kids, or are you seeing it more across the board?
So I think so when I work with, you really start to see it with 16 and 17-year-olds that really, I mean, a perfect example is, you know, we had Rich Cohen on, who wrote the Pee Wee.
Yeah.
And he just came out with a great follow-up and an article about his son quitting hockey his junior year of high school. So
Wow.
16-year kid.
I didn't even know that happened. Wow.
How this has affected him. And we'll have to have Rich back on again, because I think it's a perfect segue to what we're doing and talking about here. And it wasn't so much burnout, but it was about choice. It was like, I hate hockey. I just don't want to do as much of that. And the work that goes into it, because it's not easy. Listen, 16, 17 years old, it is a lot of work. It's not easy. It's so hard. Like I embraced it too. I mean, when I was in high school, college, I never felt burnout. I never felt the time where I got up in the morning and be like, oh God, I don't want to do this. Never. And I think and you have to, as a parent, say, well, that's just the way, you know, please tell me, don't even tell me. You reacted. You're 16, 17 years old. You can make those decisions. Now, we could talk about the pros and cons of those decisions. And like all kids, you make decisions like in that minute. You don't think it through, right? And sometimes the things you do in like, because some girl wants you to go to a dance at 17, and you don't realize how much that affects you with like how the snowball occurs. It's not that you're burned out. It's not that you hate hockey. It's just that, okay, let's just discuss the choices you're making. I want to support you in your choice, but let's just, because you can't, you know, kids don't see down. They don't see around the bend.
Right.
You have, right? You've seen around the bend.
Well, you've been there. Yeah. They've never been there.
Well, with hundreds and hundreds of high school kids. Right. So I'm like, I'm coming from this, from probably coaching a few hundred 17-year-olds. So I'm like, and out of those few hundred kids, like I've seen where kids can go that loved hockey, that weren't burned out. But once you decide, like, this is your choice, this is the consequences on the other side of that choice.
Right.
And that's a hard conversation.
You can guide them. You can try and guide them, but you can't physically take them there.
Yeah,
if you
but
try
it's important to open their eyes, say, okay, you're making this decision, but just realize, as Mike said, the consequences, because sometimes they're not seeing the full picture.
Yeah.
Okay, if I decide not to go to practice, I want to do this instead. You're gonna have to probably get benched. Okay, you're not gonna play the next game. Just realize that you can't have it all. You know,
and good and Christy, like I've worked with a lot of athletes. I'm like, listen, you are unbelievable at baseball. Like, you're going to give up baseball for this weekend in Boston for hockey? Like, that. Like focus on what you're great at. But I like hockey more. No, but you're much better at soccer.
You're making a great point. And here's the thing: I know what the twinkle of obsession of something you love feels like. I've felt it for the game basically my whole life at this point, right? My entire adult life. I know how much I love hockey. I am so blessed to work in hockey. I appreciate it. I mean, I'm in just a wonderful place in my life with this game, and understanding and having gratitude for the gift that was my passion for this game, right? That's kind of what I'm looking for in my kids, but not necessarily for hockey. I'm just looking for, man, you are so lucky in this world if you find one thing like that. Right? Not everybody even gets that. So if I see that my kid, like my son with the violin, if I in a few years realize, man, he is practicing this all the time on his own, he loves it, I'm looking for that, right? I'm looking for that thing. I want to cultivate that love. To your point with hockey, you know, you just got to be careful. Just to affirm parents out there, I'm going to speak kind of from my own experiences as a kid here. And there's a funny story. Again, I was obsessed with hockey in high school. Obsessed. It's all I did. All right. No regrets on that. Really. I loved it. It wasn't hard for me. I wanted to do it. And I remember my parents were terrified of me going to college because I would say my schoolwork maybe suffered a little bit. I was a CB student. I wasn't a horrible student, but high school wasn't, my interest. Hockey was my interest. And I remember I went to college and pretty much started pulling straight A's. And my mom and my dad told me that, after I got almost done college, like, Matt, we were shocked. We were shocked. Suddenly you were just this great student. And they said, well, how did you do that? And the first thing I said was, well, I needed to pull good grades to qualify to play, which was kind of a joke, but true at the same time. That motivated me. But I said this to them, and parents, I want you to hear me say this because I think this is really true. I told them, I was always listening to you. I was always listening to the advice you gave me. I didn't always apply it when I was 17 years old because, honestly, you guys were there. You were doing things for me. Not they weren't pampering me, but you were there. It was a safe environment. As soon as I was out of the house, I just put all of it into effect, but I was always listening to the things you had to tell me 6,473,462 times. I was listening. I just wasn't applying. I think there's a good chance that happens more often than not, right? You have to tell your kids over and over and over. You can tell I have a 10-year-old over and over again, but eventually it just clicks, right? So that's just something I wanted to say. So look, we're getting up on time here. Here's what we have to do. I got a page of notes. We have to, it's 3 signs your kid is burnout. Obviously we talked about a lot. I'm going to read all the ones we spoke about and we're going to pick 3 as a group here. And then obviously those of you listening, if you agree or disagree, email us team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. Did we miss one? Did you have one we didn't say? Let us know. All right, here's the ones that we have. And these are kind of broad across the board, right? 1, they say they don't want to do it anymore. I don't know if that's a sign of burnout. That might just be a sign of they don't want to do it anymore. Lack of interest. You are dragging them to practice. I'll say this. You're dragging them to practice where you did not have to do that before. Okay? Negative mentality or mood change. A sudden mood change from loving this game to just not talking about it, not want to be around it, maybe avoiding it. They're really tired all the time. An abnormal amount of exhaustion. You're fighting with them all the time. It's a little bit different, right? There's just aggression with every interaction, going to hockey, coming home from hockey. And this last one it's a job. It's become a job, right? That's what I have here right now. Did I miss anything from what we spoke about today?
No, I think we covered it.
Right. Okay. So look, I think a big one on here, and I'm kind of merging 2 together, but a sudden lack of interest to me is a big one here. That they were all about it. It was everything. They had the bed sheets with the NHL teams on it. They had the Trapper Keeper. Nobody has those anymore, but they had everything was hockey, and suddenly it's not. Right. It could be anything. It could be relationships. It could be movie. It could be just not wanting to do it. I think that's a pretty big sign they might be getting burnt out.
I put that as number 1.
There you go. Mike, disagree, agree?
I love it. Yeah.
Love it. Good. Yeah. So if your kid has a sudden lack of interest, parents, think about how you want to handle that. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, right? It's not about, hey, you're being lazy. That's not the way to do it. I think number 2, and this is a really important one, parents, is sudden mood changes. It's a little bit different than a lack of interest because they still may be going, right? A lack of interest is, I don't want to do this, right? The mood change can be very different. They're suddenly quiet where they used to be talking. They don't want to talk to you about it. They're very negative suddenly, right? Maybe they're blaming everybody else. That's not normal all the time if they weren't like that before. So a quick change.
Or they're acting out, and you see it on the ice too.
Yeah, they got in trouble, right? They're getting in trouble at school. They're getting a lot of penalties. That's a sign of burnout. Keeping in mind, parents, burning out does not always mean they don't want to play. It doesn't mean they want to quit. All right. You got to remember that. So it can lead to that, but someone being burnt out just might need a break. It doesn't mean they want to quit the game. Right. I think the last one for me is that it's a job.
Yeah. Right? I was going to say that too.
That's the hardest one to tell.
It's not fun. It's a job.
Right. And it's the hardest one to tell because they might seem really happy. Like, oh man, this is hard. I love it. You know what I mean? Like some of these burnout signs are very subtle of just, oh man, I'm tired and I love playing, but oh man, I got to do that again tomorrow. I mean, those
Right.
are not normal things for a kid to be saying. They shouldn't sound like us, be like, oh God, another weekday tomorrow. I got to go to work tomorrow. Like, you don't want to hear that from your kid. It should be like, I can't wait to play tomorrow. Right. Go ahead, Christy. You have something on that?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Every day should feel like a Friday, right?
Yes. Right. And here's the thing. Here's another thing. I mean, think about what a job is. It's that 9 to 5, 6 days or 5 days a week. That's another thing to make it a job. Your kid probably shouldn't be playing 9 to 5, 5 days a week, or 7 days in a row for 6 hours a day, 4 hours a day. Don't make it a job. So let's just flip this now. I think those are our 3 signs, right? Is an extreme lack of interest, a complete mood change, or behavior that doesn't make sense. And then obviously it's becoming a job. Now, the important thing here is the other side of this is, what do you do about it? Number 1 on my list is you have to ask, you have to speak with your kids, and you have to do it in an environment where they're comfortable speaking to you. And this is as simple as, just like I said, setting the right environment. Hey, son, daughter, I'd like to talk to you. I've noticed that your behavior has changed. You seem to have a lack of interest. It seems like this is a job for you. And then you really got to make it so they understand. I want you to be honest with me. You're not going to disappoint me, even if they're going to disappoint you. You're not going to disappoint me with your answer. Are you feeling burnt out? Do you still enjoy playing the game? You got to ask the questions. And then whatever their answer is, that's not the end of the situation. That's not the end of the conversation. Converse. Yeah. Empathize. Put yourself in their position. You got to meet these kids where they're at. If you talk to a 16-year-old like a 40-year-old, that's not going to go well. You want to tell them, you know what? I was 16, which is hard to believe, but I do remember feeling that way too. I remember at times it could be overwhelming. But here's the deal. Maybe we need a break. We made a commitment. Let's find ways to give you a little bit of a break while moving forward. Now, if your kid comes back and says, look, I don't want to play hockey anymore, Dad, that the conversation's turned a different direction. I'd say, parents, for the interest of not freaking you out, I don't think most kids are going to say that. All right, I think most kids are going to say, I could probably use a break. You're right. I am a little burnt out. So number 1, ask, communicate, have that trust with your kid, have that conversation. If they blow you off, they might not be burnt out. They might just not want to deal with you right now, which is okay too. Any thoughts on that? Because I have just 2 more I want to get.
It does get a little tricky. And again, especially if you have a commitment to the team, right? And you're in mid-season and you don't want to mess up the team too, because they're counting on you. So that's a delicate balance. And maybe you can bring the coach in on the conversation too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To say, hey, look my kid's burning out here. What can we do to make it better for him?
Christy, I think that's a great suggestion. And I think that's a lot about a coach. Because if you go to a coach and say, look, my kid's mental health is kind of coming out of jeopardy here, and they go, well, it's too bad, be at practice. That's probably not a great response. Now, 30 years ago, that would have been the response.
Right.
But we didn't know. Yeah, we didn't know that back then. Right.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of methodology there of it takes a village, right, to help a kid. I'm not suggesting your kid doesn't play. I'm not suggesting your kid doesn't practice. I'm suggesting you have a conversation with your kid.
Right.
And see where they're at. Okay. Because sometimes these breaks don't happen till the spring. Right. And that's life.
That's right.
Right. It's very, very normal, even at pro levels, to get a little burnt out in December around the holidays. It's a very normal thing. Right. It's just about,
and you see it at the end of the season all the time.
all the time. Right. So it's about also explaining to your kids, listen, I understand you're getting a little tired. The season ends here, or let's get to this point. Let's just because that's part of life too, is getting through the things you don't want to do.
That's true.
This is why I said it's a conversation. Right. I don't want anybody to think that, well, if your kid says you're burnt out, that's it. You got to stop. You got to break. And that's not how it works in real life. Sometimes we get burnt out. You got to push through. But this is that opportunity to work with your kid. Right. And again, burnout and wanting to quit, they are very, very different things. The reason we're having a conversation about burnout is really to keep your kid from getting over the edge here where they don't want to play. The next thing here I have here is forced breaks, or as you said, Christy, nothing scheduled. At some point during the year, if you really want to help your kids not get burnt out, you have got to take a break from the game. And I'm not talking 1 week. I'm talking a month, potentially more, away from the ice. The reason why I say forced breaks is because at the end of a hockey season, majority of teams don't win at the end of the season. So first thing you want to do is get back out there, and you're probably motivated. You want to keep going. Take a break. Take a break. All right. Parents, you need the break too. This is not just for the kids, right? If you keep in the cycle, if you keep going and playing and you're in it too. You don't realize it's happening to you. Take a break. All right.
Good advice.
Yes. The last one here. We didn't talk about this a lot, but it was assumed a lot. We talked about it in that sense. Do not compare your kid to somebody else. Whether it's Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid, or the top player on your team. Do not say to them, well, you see what that kid's doing? You see what that kid did? You should be doing that. You're going to burn your kid out. All right. The best, I think, thing my father ever did for me was I said this before a long time ago on the show. I used to like that he would tell me to practice. For whatever reason, I wanted him to tell me. And when I was 14, he said to me right to my face, I shouldn't have to tell you to do this. If you love to do it, you'll do it.
You'll do it.
Right between the eyes. I never missed a practice after that. And I never had to be asked again. That was me. That's not everybody. Okay. But never compare yourself. He never said, well, hey, listen, Eric Lindros is doing this. You know, I'm not 6'5", 225 pounds either. Right. So do not compare yourself. You can reference if the kid asks, hey, what can I do? What can I do more? Well, hey, this kid or this athlete did this. That might be something you can do, but you don't compare them to that person. Right. I think that's a great way to burn your kid out, is to constantly. You shouldn't even do that with your own kids, multiple siblings, right? You're not supposed to do that with them. So that's one for me, is do not compare your kids with anybody else. And then look, I also have it written down here. I wouldn't say these are what to do, but I think it's important just generally expand your kids' interests beyond hockey. The worst thing you can do for your kid, or your kid can do for themselves, is to be 18 and think, I'm just a hockey player. That's all.
That's right.
That's all I'll ever be, as a hockey player. Right. By far the most mental health, mental fitness stuff that I deal with is that identity issue of I'm only a hockey player. You are so much more than a hockey player. So much more. You may be a dad one day. You may have a job someplace else one day. So I wrote here, expand your interests, music, theater, writing, reading, other sports, interacting with people, clubs. There's a billion of them. It's so important that you expose your kids to other interests. Again, if you only eat chocolate ice cream, how will you know if you like any other flavor if you don't try them? Go ahead, Christie. Sorry.
No, I know. I was going to say that piece is so important, because when hockey ends, they have to realize they're more than a hockey player. And if all their little lives, what do you do? I'm a hockey player, and that's it. End of sentence.
Right.
Then what happens when it's done? Like, who am I? I don't have hockey anymore. There is an identity struggle, you know? So it's really important to expand their horizons, introduce them to other interests, so they realize hockey is just what they do. It's not who they are. Yeah.
Well, and I can say this too, Christie, that all of us here who play adult league hockey know one or multiple people that they play with that is their entire identity and world, and they are over 40, and that is all that they know. And I'm going to tell you this, pause. I've had really good conversations with a lot of them who come to me about this, of like, this is all you've ever thought of yourself. What else do you like to do? I don't know what else I like to do.
Yeah.
And they're adults. Right. And you can see how this has affected their lives. And look, my belief on it is this. If you can make the choice to change, I don't care how old you are. If that's a wonderful, beautiful thing, if you can expand yourself at any age, it gets harder as you get older. Right. But I think you should expose your kids to that early on. The last thing I'm going to say, I have this circled on here. I'm looking at it. Sign of burnout. Parents, are you burnt out? Are you burnt out? If you're burnt out, there's a good chance that's surrounding the situation with everybody. You might be burnt out. Your kid might be burnt out. Your spouse might be burnt out. All right. Now you could say, oh, I'm always burnt out. Well, that you should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Right? Remember, there is no checkmark solution to burnout. It doesn't work that way because burnout manifests itself differently for everyone. The only way through burnout, that's how I like to say it, is conversations like this, is discussing it and exploring it and discovering it and working through it with a clan, right? Or a community. That's how you get through it. But there's nothing, if your kid's burnt out, you can't snap your fingers and be like, don't be burnt out. We'll take 2 weeks off and then you're not burnt out anymore. That's not how this works. Right? It's a journey you have to go through. Anyway,
it is a journey. Yeah.
Mike, any final thoughts from you? I can see the wheels were moving up there in your mind.
No, I just think the burnout and the overuse and the timing of all that. Maybe some kid, like honestly, like when I was in high school, for some reason, we had like this weird week off between the end of the season and like playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one kid that we literally we'd fly to Florida 2 days. It's unbelievable. We'd fly to Florida for 2 days. I'd come back. I think I played the best hockey of my life. Like it was 2 days, just a little mental break. And you see this in college, NHL guys, like that's why these NHL teams have these off days on travel days, right? When they fly into a great city. Now you could go the wrong way with that.
Yeah.
You know,
Vegas.
used to be like, oh, we're in New York City, you know, let's let the next game after that's a waste of a game. But you think about that. If NHL players are doing that, college players are able to do that, even if you get around the Coliphant or just get some sun in your face, or you know you're in the doldrums of February, January, like get just that little. Sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes it's 4 weeks.
Yeah,
you know,
that's no rules. Yeah,
like so it all depends on your kid and your situation. But I think a lot of it is if you can build into your hockey environment with your children that they're hungry to get back on the ice.
Yes.
Then that's the best way to to me, that's like the most satisfying feeling when you don't even have to know your kids are burned out. You take it away from them without even saying, like, you don't say, oh, listen, you know, we really need a break. Just like, no, when they start coming to you and saying, hey, are we practicing anytime soon? Like, what the heck's going on? Like, those are kind of the things I love to hear from kids. About like when does this start again?
Yeah.
Like again, you know, you're having a horrible hockey practice when most of the kids on the team are like, is this almost over? Like, is this practice going to end soon? You're like, oh boy, these kids are not enjoying this practice. Like, and when you hear kids like me, I love my favorite line at the end of practice is, wow, that went quick. That's over already.
Yeah.
Like that's to me as a kid that's not burned out, a kid that's engaged, a kid that wants to come back. You got to now create that for your hockey season.
Yeah. Mike's favorite thing to hear is the Zamboni driver going, get off the ice. It's over. Get off the ice.
That's true.
I am adamantly the guy. I get off. I'm off early. I'm the Zamboni driver's best friend.
Yeah, no, I bet. Well, look, I think we went over a lot of things here today. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, if you have thoughts on this, agree, disagree, anything we missed, team at ourkidsplayhockey.com. You could submit a letter. You can send us a voicemail, anything you want to discuss on this show. We are here for you. And I love these episodes. I love every guest we have, but I also love when it's the three of us just discussing the trials and tribulations of being a hockey parent or being a hockey kid. And I always like to end episodes like this with our constant reminder that you're not crazy. The hockey world is crazy. I think a lot of us need to hear that. If you listen to this show, I know you need to hear that. You're not crazy. The hockey world's crazy. But that's going to do it for this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Again, a great discussion today on burnout. If you feel like your kid is burnt out and you want to talk about this more, please contact us. We're here for you. This is something we can, at least, if anything, send you to some of the right resources to help you with that. But I think I'm going to end it there unless anybody has any more final thoughts.
That was a great episode. Really important, especially now. I think parents need to hear this.
Yeah, I agree with you, Christie. So for Christie Casciano Burns, Mike Bonelli, I'm Elias. That's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Remember the entire Our Kids Play Hockey episode list, which is over 250 episodes, available at ourkidsplayhockey.com. We cannot thank you enough, the listeners, for allowing us to come into your homes and to be part of this conversation as you go through the youth hockey journey. And remember, we'll see you on the next edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Without further ado, skate on. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.